Hello, welcome back to Killer Score. This is going to be the first episode for one of our many theme months we run, specifically Musical March.
Hey.
For those of you joining us, this is Killer Score, the podcast that covers cult classic movies with phenomenal soundtracks, scores, talks about their composers and the history behind the films, and why we think you should watch them or not watch them. Occasionally we do cover one where we're like,
Don't watch
this. Look up the score, though.
Yeah.
The Burning being one of those.
Rock and roll.
Spawn, kind of.
To a lesser extent, Moulin Rouge, or at least in his case.
Yeah, at least in my case, yeah. So, yeah, this is our first one. I am, of course, your host, Daulton. You can find me on Twitter and YouTube under Sick Jacket Man. Content coming soon to both. My voice acting demo reel is also on my Twitter and YouTube. If you care to have me in some projects, check it out. See if I'm your guy.
He's great.
Thank you.
Hi, Erin Murray here. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Naya Murray. You can also find my crafting website, witchandcraftsnj.com. I'm also in the process of writing my very first video essay, which is something I'm excited about. And I have to figure out how to get around YouTube censorship problems. For context, it's about the movie Come and See, which is considered one of the most harrowing depictions of war ever put to film.
Woo!
On that happy note, Richie Eckert here with Richie's Rad Voices and Richie's Rad Production Struggles as he puts his audio dramas up in a totally organized fashion. God is my witness, I will find a way to mitigate the issues I've been having with future episodes and projects. But I've got a whole bunch of stuff coming out with my buddies over at Tantalus and Royal Flush and Everwest. And I'm also working on some side projects as well. Once again, I'm not dead, I'm just busy.
I think that describes all of us at certain points.
Yeah.
It's especially true for me, though.
Anyway, who wants to I want to ask, who wants to introduce my own movie?
Yeah,
That's so stupid. Why am I saying this?
Your movie, Erin.
So
Who could it be?
Off to a great start.
Off to a great start, folks.
Professionals.
Okay, so...
So, Aaron.
So, my movie is my pick from Musical March is a movie that some of you may already be familiar with. I wouldn't really consider it a cult film. It's just a personal favorite of mine that came out around the same time as Shrek.
Yeah, I would say it's become a cult film just because it got overshadowed by...
It got overshadowed by Shrek both commercially and
just Dreamworks' output afterwards.
And Dreamworks' output afterwards. Like, when you look at Shrek, you're just like, oh yeah, they just did another Puss in Boots movie, which I've heard is actually good.
Just saw it yesterday from the comfort of my own home with my family. I can confirm it is amazing. The animation is fantastic. The story is actually surprisingly heartwarming with a lot of depth and a lot of, heart. And those aforementioned animation tricks. Imagine if Into the Spider-Verse covered storybooks and fairy tales instead of comic books. It very much fits that whole color palette and semi-watercolor aesthetic, while simultaneously having the single best fight scenes in any Shrek movie ever.
Yeah, I'm glad that movie seems to have inspired some animation styles. I don't know if you caught the trailer for that new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah,
it looks very Spider-Verse.
It looks very good, but it's not a ripoff, or it's not It's not just aping its style. It does different. Yeah.
I like the turtle designs too.
Oh yeah. And the fact that they're voiced by actual teenagers.
Yeah, and using a Tribe Called Quest music, which, yes,
Peak 90s hip hop.
yes, makes sense because the Turtles are a very 90s
There. Oh yeah.
property, even if they came out in the 80s.
No worries. Just a little.
Yeah, the screen just went dark. We're still good.
Yep.
Okay. So, it is the movie that came out from DreamWorks before Shrek. We are, of course, talking about 1998's The Prince of Egypt. Now, if you're familiar with this movie, chances are you either watch it as a kid, watch it as an adult, or watch it at some kind of church function.
I got some flack from my theater troupe for not having seen this in high school.
Oh.
They were like, "You have," because like they started singing one of the songs from Prince of Egypt, and I was just like sitting there like. They're like, "Have you not seen Prince of Egypt?" And I'm like, "No." They're like, "You haven't seen Prince of Egypt?" And I'm like, "Who has? All of us." What?
Dalton's the theater kid. Odd person out. The odd theater kid out, people.
It was a weird moment.
And you want to know something crazy? Speaking of theater kids and the Prince of Egypt,
Yeah.
in 2020 they actually did a stage adaptation
Huh.
of the Prince of Egypt. It didn't last long because it was 2020.
Yeah.
Like when you open any, it's like things that opened up or like started to throw out a bunch of money in 2008.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or
Jesus Christ.
or near 2008. Rest in peace, Hard Rock Amusement Park / Freestyle Music Park.
Ow.
Oh.
I won't judge you for never having seen it before, Dalton. In fact, I'm excited. I will promise you, though, that I am probably going to be singing along mid-screening.
Okay.
Don't be surprised if I chime into the plagues in particular.
I think both of us will.
Yeah.
But let me preface the movie just by saying, if you're not familiar with the story of it, you don't have to read the source material, because it's biblical, and you don't have to read the entirety of the Book of Exodus to understand this movie. It's okay, Daulton.
Good.
It's okay, Daulton.
I was worried I would have to read the Bible as transcribed by the almighty Jimmy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Heathens.
But for context, this movie is essentially it's a animated retelling of the Ten Commandments. So Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was a Disney executive at the time, kept bothering Michael Eisner like, "Hey, can we do the Ten Commandments? Hey, can we do the Ten Commandments? Can we do the Ten Commandments?" And the answer was always no.
Or the Exodus in this case.
Well, the movie itself, The Ten Commandments, the Charlton Heston movie.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Disney, when they were like doing Pirates of the Caribbean, everyone was like, Errol Flynn, Errol Flynn, Errol Flynn. And then they just went in a completely different direction. And the CEO at the time specifically came to like an early like rehearsal for Pirates. And I kid you not, they saw what Johnny Depp was doing. And they said he's going to ruin the movie.
That's hilarious.
Which is hilarious given that what everyone knows from those movies is the Jack Sparrow character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Barbossa.
And Barbossa.
And Barbossa.
And Barbossa.
Yeah. But anyway, back to the Prince of Egypt. This one's a little bit crooked. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so after Jeffrey Katzenberg left Disney and started DreamWorks, he was talking with his friends David Geffen and Steven Spielberg. And he was just talking with him about like, hey, I want to do 10 Commandments. And they told him, you have to do the 10 Commandments.
That's an interesting combination of people.
Yeah, I know. Jeffrey Katzenberg, Steven Spielberg, and David Geffen.
Yeah.
David Geffen's the one that confuses me. It's like, okay, film guy.
Record
Record
producer.
company, dude?
It's like record executive?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a musical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie did have some hurdles in production. They were still
No.
writing the screenplay when they were doing the storyboards.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big problem that they had.
You don't do that.
You don't do that. You write the screenplay and then you do the storyboards. You don't do it at the same time.
Flashbacks to behind-the-scene footage of Phantom Menace.
Oh.
I was going to say The Thief and the Cobbler, but
That-
okay.
Oh.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
It's back. You brought it back.
But one thing I can appreciate about the making of this film is that they got, is that Katzenberg and the crew did talk to different people of different groups. Like, they talked to different Jewish, Muslim, Christian, biblical scholars just to get it as accurate as possible, which is something I can really appreciate, because sometimes when you see cases of them trying to do historically accurate movies, they don't actually talk to the people.
Yeah.
Does that mean we're going to get the angel of death? Is the angel of death in this? Please tell me the angel of death is in this.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's more ethereal. It's not like an actual
yeah,
person. Yeah.
In fact, I'd say my favorite part of this,
It's the last plague.
the Last Plague, and the artistic angles they take on the biblical stories here. Like, they do their own things with it, and they spare no expense of this being an animated adaptation.
So, yes, that is, they didn't want to, they did take a few liberties here and there just for
Oh, yeah.
storytelling's sake. But it's not anything like we had to completely change the story, because they even address in the beginning of the movie with like a title card saying like, this is what we were going for, although we did take some liberties.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other issue that they ran into was, how do you create the voice of God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they ran into a bunch of problems with that. They tried to do, one aspect that they tried to do was mixing the voice of a man, a woman, and a child at the same time to do it.
Okay.
They said it sounded like Satan.
I could see that.
Which, yeah,
see
that's
that.
kind of what happens when you mix all those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of sounded like Reagan from The Exorcist, let's be honest here.
Oh, good. Not Ronald Reagan. Although Ronald Reagan would sound like the devil.
666.
Anyway.
Perfect timing. Moses, you need to bring me some jelly beans.
What they eventually went with was just having Val Kilmer voice both Moses and God to make it seem like God was speaking through Moses.
They're distinct enough.
They're distinct enough, but also made sense story-wise, because they wanted it to sound like, hey, this is what the voice in your head sounds like, instead of being like some big loud booming thing.
Is that what they did with God's voice in Field of Dreams? Was that Costner that did the God voice, or?
I think so.
Yeah, don't quote us on that.
Don't
I've
quote us on
never
that.
even seen Field of Dreams.
Neither have I.
It sounded like Costner back when I saw it.
Yeah.
Really sweet movie.
Yeah,
Good guy cry movie.
Yeah, I've heard that.
What else? What other notes did I have?
I do have one
So-
question for you related to this movie.
Yes.
So Val Kilmer voices Moses, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, is there also a Seal song in this movie since
No.
Val Kilmer's involved? Okay. All right.
Baby. Oh, the more I get of you, more we're demonetized.
Yeah. It's only demonetized if you actually use the actual clip.
We're fine.
We're fine. Anyway, so they weren't expecting this movie to make a lot of money, so some of the animators who were working on The Prince of Egypt left the project to work on Shrek.
Hilarious enough.
I will say that the animators that made that call made the right call.
Yeah, it was a moderate success at the box
Yeah.
office. It was not Shrek.
It was not Shrek, which
No.
also had a very troubled development.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny though, because they expected Shrek to flop and Prince of Egypt to do well.
I could see that because technically this had a smoother production than Shrek did.
Yeah.
Because Shrek at first they were like, okay, it's a 2D movie. Okay, now it's not a 2D movie. Oh, Chris Farley's dead. Oh, okay. Who are we getting? Mike Myers, I guess. He's also an SNL guy.
Like, not to mention, this movie was, Prince of Egypt was being made when the Disney movie musical was still fairly marketable.
Yeah. And they were worried about Shrek because the whole point of Shrek is taking the Mickey out of fairy tales.
Yeah.
Want to know something funny about this movie, though? So, they went through a lot of different casting decisions of who should voice the high priests of Egypt.
Oh, I know who these are.
They went with
love this.
They went with Steve Martin and Martin Short, but the original idea they had was Cheech and Chong.
That's pretty good.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah, they were looking at a bunch of different comedians, and they were like, oh, we can go with Cheech and Chong, and they were like, this is not going to work if we use Cheech and Chong.
Yeah. What about Jim Varney? He's busy with Toy Story.
Which I believe actually was the case.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Considering where they take the priests in terms of the musical, I have to agree. I love Cheech and Chong, but they would not have worked for this.
Yeah, I can't imagine Cheech and Chong playing with the big boys.
Quite a lot of 80s sitcom people in the Toy Story movies when you think about it.
Yeah, Wayne Knight.
Yeah, what's his face from Cheers, voicing Ham?
John Ratzenberger.
John Ratzenberger. You got Jim Varney, who had the Ernest TV show and was on commercial spots. Oh, and weirdly enough, don't forget Tom Hanks, because he was in Bosom Buddies.
Yep. And David Hyde Pierce in A Bug's Life.
Yeah, a lot of sitcom people doing animated films in the 90s.
Yep.
And there were two other things I did want to mention. One is that they were having some trouble trying to get the right sound for young Miriam's voice when she's singing. Because it's like, we gotta find a little girl singing. And they're having some trouble finding the sound that they wanted. So they got the director, Brenda Chapman, who was just like, hey, can you sing in a high-pitched voice and sound like a child? And it worked.
That's surprising to me because there's so many voice actresses that specify in doing young kid voices that could also sing.
Barbara Goodson, Kari Walgren, Gray Delisle,
Tara Strong. Yeah. Well, Tara Strong can't sing. I'm not even being mean. That's they literally they do voice doubles for her whenever she plays a character that has to sing. So.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have our weaknesses.
Kari Walgren's got the voice of an angel.
Yeah.
E.G. Daly. Her too. Elizabeth Daly.
Yeah.
Tommy Pickles.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there was... I guess they were just being picky about the sound they wanted.
Budgetary, maybe.
And
too.
probably budgetary reasons, because they were kind of like on the fence of how this movie was going to turn out.
Yeah.
Because they were like, we don't know if this is going to be a big blockbuster, or we don't know if this is just going to flop.
Yeah, because I don't even know what it would have been competing against at the time.
It was 1998.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what Disney put out in 98.
Let me
Was
find
that
out.
Mulan?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
What was it?
Mulan.
Oh.
Yeah, 98 was Mulan, right?
Yeah.
Another fairly accurate, if not artistic liberty heavy movie about history.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting one too. I feel like because at this time DreamWorks was starting to rise up to be a big competitor in the film industry against what was it?
So the movie that came out at the same time was Ants?
Oh yeah. Who did
And-
Ants? Was that also Disney?
No, that was DreamWorks.
That was DreamWorks. Huh?
That was their first CG movie.
And
Yeah, 'cause
Pixar
Ants came out a little bit earlier than Prince of Egypt.
and Pixar was just coming out because what was the original Toy Story? 94?
95.
95.
95, yeah.
Yeah. But what ended up happening is that it came out the week before Christmas.
Yeah.
Which, considering how many studios throw movies out around Christmas,
Yeah.
you can be surprised that this movie was just a moderate success.
Yeah, people forget that the Christmas time is also prime movie real estate. People forget about that.
Because that's when Oscar season is popping up.
Yeah, and they pretty much always put the Star Wars movies out around Christmas.
Always.
Yeah.
Also, the other thing that they had the problem with marketing is that they were marketing the movie more towards adults than kids.
Yeah.
Because of the context of the film. Mm-hmm. The only thing is that the only stores that were really selling merch related to the movie was Walmart, strangely enough.
I could see that.
I can kind of see that just because of how Christian of a company Walmart is.
Yeah.
But however, I don't remember ever seeing a Moses or Ramesses toy.
Yeah.
Be a weird thing to have toys of, to be honest.
It would be. And also, they had some issues with widespread distribution of the movie in certain countries because certain religions don't allow for showing images of different prophets.
Yeah.
So this movie is actually banned in 6 countries.
Oh, I can tell you what else this movie would have had trouble competing with too.
What?
At the box office. This was December of '98 when this came out?
Yeah.
Okay,
the
yeah.
week before Christmas.
I can tell you why I didn't see this movie too in theaters.
Why?
Because what came out a month before in November of 1998? Big smash hit for Fox Animation. Pokemon the first movie.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so that was definitely probably still cutting into the profits.
Pokemon would have been Warner Brothers.
No, it was Fox at the time, remember?
Really?
Yeah, Fox Animation was the distributor for...
Fox Kids would have been Digimon, though. I remember because Pokemon was on Kids WB.
Oh, yeah, it
and all
was
that.
distributed by Warner Brothers in the United States. My bad, but still, they were competing against Pokemon, the first movie, which, for those of you who weren't there...
It was huge.
It was huge. I definitely went at least a few times.
I went twice.
Yeah.
Not as bad as the critics claim it is, but also kind of bad in ways they don't cover.
Yeah, my dad was like, I had to take you to see that a few times. It was okay.
I will say this, as with many things, it was my gateway drug.
Yeah, and I will say Mewtwo, the performance from Mewtwo is kind of what sells that movie.
Yeah. Although I will never tire of my favorite joke in that movie. We can't have Pokemon fight each other to the death. We have to make sure they use magical fantasy moves like flamethrower.
No, best
Bite.
The best joke in the... You're wrong. The best joke in the movie. It's so stupid, but I didn't know that Vikings were still around. Yeah, they're mostly in Minnesota. Such a good joke. One of the best localization jokes ever.
Say what you will about 4Kids, but they had some good ad libs.
They really did.
Anyway, Prince of Egypt.
Prince of Egypt.
Okay. So if you do want to watch this movie, and if you haven't seen it before, it's streaming on Peacock.
Yeah, I pretty much always see this in DVD and Blu-ray bargain bins too.
That too. It's very easy to find at DVD. You can find it at FYE or Walmart easily.
Yeah,
or
you're
Target,
definitely gonna
maybe
easily
even.
find it in one of those Walmart dump bins and stuff.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. I was
It's a
considering.
DreamWorks movie.
It's a DreamWorks movie. I was considering buying a copy of this the last time we went to FYE because they had 3 copies of it in a bargain bin.
Yeah, exactly.
They did do a sequel to this though. That's technically a prequel. Joseph King of Dreams. Don't watch that movie. It's
Okay.
terrible.
Yeah.
Unless you have a car crash watching fascination with 2000s alt rock sounds.
Yeah, and I'm the only one here who hasn't seen it. I feel like we should establish that. We didn't we implied it, but we did make clear they've seen it. I have not.
Yep. I have.
Richie, what was your introduction to this movie?
Oh, I was just about to get to that. So I saw this in grade school. I went to a Catholic grade school for context. And I remember specifically it was my 6th grade class that had seen this movie. And it was because our religion classes were covering the Ten Commandments at the time, and let's face it, no class with that length was going to show the Charlton Heston movie, and I'm kind of glad because this movie has aged better.
Yeah.
That movie, the aforementioned movie, is a classic, but this one has...
The production design and production on that original Charlton Heston one, though.
It was good.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. It's actually a remake of an earlier Charlton Heston movie.
I actually
Not Charlton Heston. An earlier Cecil B. DeMille movie that was done back in like the 30s.
Yeah.
The big boy of the early days of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up, you know?
But I have fond memories of being introduced to that and then watching it with some of my voice actor buddies, some of whom I would love to hit up for a cover of The Plagues with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can do a mean Ramses.
I've been meaning to ask you guys, just because this movie, I haven't even watched it, gives me this vibes. This gives me vibes of, like, field trip at a school program to go see a movie. Did you guys ever do that, like a school program field trip to go see a movie?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah, no?
I
You might have, I didn't.
had a summer school thing where I did that.
I did, too. What was your movie?
You'll like this, Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
Mine was oddly specific. Mine was Surf's Up.
Good movie.
Good movie. What was it at that time in Penguin movies? Penguin movies just started springing up.
Happy Feet,
Happy
Surf's
Feet's
Up.
March of the Penguins, I think, is what kicked it off.
There was a lot of Penguin movies.
Yeah, because, like, March of the Penguins was that documentary that they did.
Yeah.
And then people were like, oh my god, penguins are adorable. And then it was like, let's do a bunch of animated penguin movies.
They are cute, though.
Fun story about that. I love penguins, and that era is what kicked off my love of penguins. And if he listens, he'll enjoy hearing this. When I was when I was a kid, when Happy Feet came out, I was probably like, what was that? 2006 came out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've been 11.
So I was like 11, but I still bought.
Wait, 12.
Yeah, I still bought stuffed animals, and
Me too.
I bought like a little plushie of the baby version of the main character.
Mumble,
that's it. And I had that plushie, and when my brother was born, like the same year, he gravitated towards that plushie,
Oh.
and I gave him the plushie, and that was like the first thing, one of the first things I ever did with my brother, and he's loved penguins ever since too. Yeah.
It's not my favorite movie ever, but that's cute.
That's a cute story.
Good soundtrack though.
Amazing soundtrack. I love all the reggaeton in there.
The fact that that's a George Miller movie will never cease to amaze me.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Yes,
the Mad Max Fury Road guys, people.
Yep. But I'm excited for this, just knowing that you're about to listen to some bangers in this.
Yeah,
Daulton.
I'm going in blind. I've seen like little gifs here and there from this movie and like little snippets, but I've never watched it. So
I think you'll enjoy it.
I do like religious studies and stuff. So
Because it's really good. The best way I can describe it is that if the Bible was a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yes.
okay, yeah, that sounds good. Anything else to add before we get into our screening?
I mean, I could go into my introduction of this movie, but it will involve my weirdly uber religious childhood. So yeah,
the second half.
that'll be for the,
Church function, I'm guessing.
no, my grandparents.
Okay, took you to see it, I guess. Yeah.
No, they rented the DVD. Not DVD. They rented the VHS tape, and I just fell in love with the movie when I was like 4 years old.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. All right, so let's get into our screening of Prince of Egypt.
And we're back. We just finished watching The Prince of Egypt. This is one of my... I would say, yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite movies, especially from when I was a kid. We did forget to mention that Hans Zimmer did the score. In my opinion, is one of his best scores. And the soundtrack was done by Stephen Schwartz, who a lot of people know because he did the music for Wicked.
Yeah,
What-
Pippin, a bunch of
A bunch of other musicals. But I want to know, what do you guys think?
What a movie to revisit for the podcast. I remember this being a masterpiece back when I saw it in middle school, and then in the middle of college with my buddies again, and the third time has only solidified its status as a masterpiece in my mind. The animation's great, the songs are beautifully orchestrated and written, the voice acting is fantastic, and marks one of those few moments where celebrities actually slipped into character, and it's just a artistically beautiful rendition of a classic biblical story. But I am not the uninitiated, and I am eager to hear his thoughts.
Yeah, no, this was solid. Like I said, this was my first time seeing it. I've brought it up before, but for those who haven't heard, I had kind of weird viewing habits when I was younger. Around the time this was out, I was mostly running on repeat on VHS stuff like the original Batman films and Lion King specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones I replayed a lot. And the year that this came out in theaters, as I stated, I did not go to see this. I went and I saw Pokemon, and I saw it like a few times, which, I mean, is this probably the better movie than Pokemon, the first movie? Yeah. But is Pokemon, the first movie, nostalgic and has Mewtwo? Also, yes. The Bible doesn't have Mewtwo.
Wouldn't that be weird, OT?
Oh, there's a shirt. The Bible doesn't have Mewtwo.
Right up there with Give Us the Squiffs.
Yeah, and you have a Mewtwo dressed up like a pharaoh.
But yeah, this movie's so good.
Rock solid.
And I think my favorite part of this movie are the aforementioned artistic angles that they take on the story staples. You know, you got everything in this movie. You've got the basket in the river, you have the plagues, you have the burning bush.
The Angel of Death.
And a strong argument can be made that the Prince of Egypt has the best versions of most of those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd argue that, certainly.
Yeah, I really enjoy. There's quite a few things. I really enjoyed the very ethereal way that the Angel of Death was portrayed. It's not what you would expect. It's very almost beautiful, which is what makes it kind of haunting.
Oh yeah.
It makes it kind of it makes it in a way like horrifying when you think about it, because it's like something so beautiful being so destructive.
Yeah.
It's portrayed as a slightly brightly lit wind that just blows over all of Egypt and doesn't pass your house unless the lamb's blood has been applied.
Which I think is also pretty accurate to biblical text. Not the lamb's blood part, obviously, but I mean the portrayal of the Angel of Death, because I'm pretty sure it even says that it spread like a wind.
Yeah.
I think it did, yeah.
Yeah, through Egypt.
It's been forever since I've read the Bible, but I think you're right, actually.
Yeah. Because that's why, because I can think of I'm pretty sure it is, because even when you look at medieval texts, they associate death with the wind a lot.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
Erin, you said earlier that this is probably your favorite score by Hans Zimmer. I think it's very close for me.
Oh, yeah?
It's a toss-up between this and The Lion King.
That's fair.
I thought that was Elton John.
Elton John did some of the songs for it, but Hans Zimmer did the score.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, the Stampede music,
The soundtrack was done by Elton John, the score was done by Hans Zimmer.
Okay.
Yes.
Which, Hans Zimmer did a surprising amount of animated films in the 90s.
He did.
Because a lot of people associate Hans Zimmer with his live-action work.
Especially his work with Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, especially his work with Christopher Nolan, especially his work with Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. I mean,
Or-
how much does the Dark Knight soundtrack get sampled or used for stock music?
Yeah. I was also going to mention one of the scores that he did. Well, there's 2 scores I wanted to mention that Hans Zimmer did that I really like that weren't from an animated film. One was The Last Samurai,
Okay.
Good score.
which has a good score, really good score. I love how he used a lot of traditional Japanese instruments
Mhm.
in that score to like create the scene.
Yeah.
And the other one I was going to mention is the Sherlock Holmes score.
Those are fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really fun score. I love his use of like jilty, like kind of like jaunty music because it fits. It's like they said they destroyed a pub piano and just went with it with
Yeah. If
and
it's
just wrote music around the sound of this like busted up piano.
Oh, wow. He did a lot of scores for movies I really, really like.
Yeah.
You want to know what else he did? Megamind, first off.
shout out to my brother.
Yeah. He did the score for Megamind, for Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, for every single Kung Fu Panda movie, which I love
Still
all
have
of them.
not seen those.
Neither have I.
Great movies.
Yeah,
all
I'll
of
have to
them.
watch them sometime.
Some of the best fight scenes you'll ever see in an American animated movie.
Yeah.
I will
I've
tell
heard
you that.
Yeah. I'll have to see them sometime. We're never going to cover them on the podcast because
Too big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're box office smashes. Like
There's like 3 of them.
Exactly. But
Ask me what my favorite DreamWorks movie is, and I'll probably either tell you the first Kung Fu Panda movie or the second one or Road to El Dorado.
I'm pretty partial to the original How to Train Your Dragon myself.
Fantastic. 2's good too.
Oh,
2
yeah.
is so
2's
good.
Really good as well.
I haven't seen any of the How to Train Your Dragon movies.
You should.
You
They're
must.
Good. They're good.
Yeah. I've been told that many times by many people.
Friend of the podcast and over at Noisy Pixel, Colin. We go back a bit. Check
Good
out
guy.
Yeah, check out Noisy Pixel. They're a video game website that he does some writing for.
Really insightful dude, honestly. Like, all this stuff is super well thought out and layered. Like, guy's a thinking man's game critic, I'll tell you.
He's a sourpuss, but he's my sourpuss.
Mine too. Hugs for you, buddy.
But I bring him up because he was my introduction to How to Train Your Dragon. We were hanging out one day back when he still lived around our area, and he was like, "You've never seen How to Train Your Dragon?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "We're watching that right now. I have the Blu-ray." And I was like, "Okay."
It's funny because my friend Tiffany was like, "You need to watch that movie," and she was the first person to tell me to watch that movie, and it was like 2 months after it came out because she saw it in theaters and just loved it.
Oh, it's cute. It's very cute.
So back to Prince of Egypt.
Yeah. And Hanzo.
Yeah. Really dynamic symphonic score, like what he would really put out a lot of.
Feels very classical as it should. Yeah.
Yes. Same sort of epic feel as Lion King, and as Erin mentioned, he's got a real ear for using era-appropriate instruments, like all of the woodwind instruments for the Lion King and the brass instruments for this.
Another one I was going to mention, Hans Zimmer did the score for another movie that I loved when I was a kid, and I still really like this movie. It's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He did the score for that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did the score for that. I think that was another Hans Zimmer Steven Schwartz collaboration.
Interesting.
But what they did, no, it wasn't Steven Schwartz. It was Alan Menken.
Alan Menken.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're right. It was Alan
yeah,
Menken
yeah.
because it was Disney. It was Disney in the 90s. Of course, it's Alan Menken. But no, what I was going to say is that another score that I liked is that score from The Hunchback of Notre Dame because he implied a lot of Gregorian chants into
Yeah.
the score, which works perfectly for a film set in and around a church in the 1400s.
Yes. Absolutely.
And thankfully, since it's a film adaptation, we don't have to hear a bunch about architecture.
Because Victor Hugo.
Victor Hugo's fucking architecture.
Yeah. You want to hear about a sewer for 6 pages? Not really, Victor. Too bad.
But
Yeah.
I feel so bad for my friends in like the 8th grade who had to read Les Miserables.
Oh.
Wasn't
honors-
it annotated, was it?
No,
Oh.
it was 8th grade honors English had to read Les Mis.
Ooh.
We had to read the Iliad, and as a freshman in high school, I had to read the Iliad.
The Iliad.
I didn't have to read
Do you
any
know
of
how
that 'cause
long the Iliad
I
is?
know
I
it's
do.
long. See, I wasn't in honors English because my school district really sucked about trying to get your kids into honors or AP programs. Like you had to do it in like the 3rd grade
That's
in
weird.
order for them to get in until high school.
That is odd.
And then in high school, if you got enough like grade, like you got basically like straight A's in your classes, and at the 8th grade you could get honors classes throughout high school.
Huh.
It was the dumbest thing. It was like, oh, you didn't get in when you were 9? Fuck you.
Prince of Egypt.
Yeah. No, yeah. Hans Zimmer did a good score for this. I didn't get to bring up my thing. I know I have harsh opinions most of the time for Mr. Zimmer. I figured I figured though I'd bring up one score of his I do enjoy, which is I do enjoy his Blade Runner 2049 score. It's not the same. I'm gonna throw that out there. It's no Vangelis. It's no Vangelis. Like
I think Hans Zimmer's main problem, this is my honest opinion, is that he has what I call the Danny Elfman problem, where everyone
wants him
to make one score,
Yeah.
and like he's at his best when he's allowed to play with the setting like he does in this movie and in The Lion King and in Kung Fu Panda, because you could tell like it's 10 times more alive.
Yeah. Because I will say 2049's oppressive sound really fits the film.
It's dark, moody atmosphere.
Yeah.
But Daulton, since you mentioned your favorite scene in this movie, I might as well let you know mine. Do we really need spoilers for this? Because I mean, it is the Bible. Yeah.
Spoilers for the Bible.
Jesus. Oh wait, no, that's the New Testament.
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
New Testament. We're still Old Testament.
So, I think my favorite scene in this, well, it's divvied up 2 ways, but first let's talk about the burning bush. Because
That's my favorite.
the warm yet powerful score, the visual effects of the blue fire around the bush, the way it shows Moses walking up to it with trepidation, wondering why his hand and his staff aren't on fire. And as was alluded to in the intro, bless you, Val Kilmer's just smooth, parental voice as God.
Yeah, because when I first watched this movie, it's funny. I was probably 4 when I first watched this. And that's how I imagined God's voice sounding like, because I was so young when I watched that. Just something more like comforting and paternal than how he's depicted in like every other format. Just booming and like screaming at you. Like the only other, I remember when I was reading Goodnight Pun Pun, the voice of God in that manga is like, for some reason when I read it, the voice of God is always in all caps, like, and bold-faced and like exclamation points and all that, and I'm like, when I read that, the voice in my head goes, "What do you ask of God, Pun Pun?" And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but they did a really good job making Val Kilmer's Moses and God voices distinct, because while there is similarities reflective of the theme that God is appearing to Moses as a messenger of his own soul, they do a really cool whispery echo after effect, where after God speaks, the sentence repeats in...
Yeah, it's like a reverb.
Yeah, like a whispery reverb.
Yeah. I was gonna say I enjoy a lot of the color palette for this movie.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
some of the best deserts you'll ever see in a 2D animated movie.
Yeah.
They work in a lot of early CG animation, but in a way that blends with the rest of the movie and doesn't stick out like a sore thumb like that awful animated adaptation of The King and I.
I forgot that existed.
You're welcome.
Oh yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
That's a thing.
It sucks.
Yeah, I figured. Huh.
The King and I also sucks, but The King and I in general sucks, but that version is a special kind of awful.
Richie, I don't even worry about upsetting the Marvel fans, but I for some reason I'm worried about upsetting the Rodgers and Hammerstein fans.
I mean, there's not a million, but there's a lot of great Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals.
Yeah, I know, I'm just saying.
I like some of the songs from that. I just hate the film adaptation. That's all I'm gonna say.
But Yul Brynner.
I mean, Yul Brynner's great.
And hot.
And hot. But no, the point I'm trying to make is it was like, hey, we don't want to cast Asian American actors.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's how it was at the time everywhere, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, we can discuss that movie at a different time, but The Prince of Egypt.
Hey, it's no Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh, God.
Oh, Christ. I am omitting any image at all of that. Okay.
Yeah, guys, just Google Mickey Rooney Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah, just Google that. We don't want to elaborate.
Or don't. Watch the movie and be very horrified and confused.
Yeah, when if you watch Breakfast at Tiffany's is one of those like seemingly innocuous, like very like innocent 50s, 60s like comedies where everything's like, oh yeah, we're gonna talk really fast and have some witty dialogue, and then you see that and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Breakfast at Tiffany's when I was like in probably my sophomore year of high school because one of my friends was on an Audrey Hepburn kick.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool, yeah, let's watch Breakfast at Tiffany's. We got 10 minutes in, we're like, we're not watching this movie.
Yeah.
Then we watch Roman Holiday again.
I mean, there's that and the fact that this was written by Truman Capote in his bourgeoisie phase of his life, his high society phase.
Yeah.
Shame, because Audrey Hepburn was super hot.
Oh, she was fantastic.
Yeah.
But back to Prince of Egypt. I warned both of you that I was going to belt along to the plagues, and I delivered. I love that musical number. The animation on all the plagues of God was amazing, from the CG frogs hopping out of the murky waters to the locusts floating past the screen and one actually coming up for a close-up.
Yeah.
It's all so haunting. And the singers are in top form, especially Ramses.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say Ralph Fiennes as Ramses is, in my opinion at least, the standout performance of the film.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. You don't really hear a lot about locusts anymore.
I mean, they're still a problem. You just don't hear about them as much anymore because, we have pesticides for that now.
Not only that, but like I feel like there's other more common pests that like scourge crops that we like have to deal with now.
Yeah.
Like woodland critters and stuff.
Yeah. Like rabbits.
Mice?
Yeah. Oh, squirrels are a bad one. Look it up. There was this whole time California started this initiative to get people to kill a bunch of squirrels.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that Dollop episode.
Look up the California War against squirrels. It's wild because it happened around World War I, so they started comparing them to like German infiltrators, and there's like,
oh my god,
you could see propaganda art of like squirrels in the little German helmets from the period with the little spike points and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the Kaiser helmets.
It's wild shit.
I will try and find that and put that up for the video version and post. But yeah, animation's just great all around.
Absolutely.
Wartime propaganda art is just a wild thing in general.
Yeah.
You guys ever seen the carpool one? Where
Yes.
it's like carpool or else you're riding with
Oh my god, yeah.
and there's just driving in like a ghostly in the
It's in the
passenger
passenger
seat.
I don't want to include that image. That'll probably get us demonetized.
Yeah. Or let's just some of them are yikes.
The one that was there was this one that I saw where it was supposed to be like a picture of a Soviet coal miner or something, and everything's written in Russian, but the caption that someone like put under it was, "The Soviet Union wants you to take a bath."
Prince of Egypt. But yeah, like I said, animation's just great. I especially love the dynamic camera movements for this 2D style. I love the Dreamworks 2D animated style in general, to be honest.
Absolutely.
There's a
Weird observation I have here, but I would not be surprised if you guys remember those like hieroglyphics where they animate the hieroglyphics moving on the wall.
yeah.
I would not be surprised if someone from Nintendo looked at that and saw that as influence for Link Between Worlds.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever play that one?
Yes.
Yeah, how like you move as a 2D picture
Yeah,
on the
2D.
wall and stuff.
Of the art.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if like that specific art, like capturing right there, was used as direct inspiration for those segments. In
Oh,
Link Between
absolutely.
Worlds, yeah.
The hieroglyph sequences are super haunting. They use that as a shorthand for the nightmares Moses has about how he could have been one of the Hebrew babies thrown into the river. And the sequence the next morning is just chilling when he's talking to the old pharaoh, his adoptive father.
Yeah, when he's talking to Seti, who's voiced by Patrick Stewart, you can hear like the trepidation and just kind of like the fear and confusion in Moses' voice, and then right when Pharaoh Seti just goes like, "They were only slaves," you're like, "Wow, I hate you."
Yeah, you're not used to hearing that kind of coldness from Patrick Stewart. So
Like,
it's like,
he makes a good villain when you cast him as
what
one.
what is brief time you see of him?
Yes.
Yeah, he's
Um,
only in there for like the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But once again, I am with you, Daulton, in agreeing that Ray Fiennes is knocking it out of the park
Yeah.
as Ramesses. There's a vulnerability to his voice that is buried under layers of royal ego and stoicism and determination, which makes things all the more heartbreaking when he turns fully around and basically commits himself to being the next ruthless pharaoh.
Yeah. You know, it's Patrick Stewart. That's a guy you don't want to cross, especially if you're messing with his lilies. Insert the gif from that movie of Patrick Stewart with a gun trying to shoot gophers. So good.
Killer score. The ultimate test of Richard Eckert's editing prowess.
Yeah. I just can't believe personally that this, I was wrong about one thing I wanted to bring up. It turns out that this did perform better than the Pokemon movie did at the box office, but that's only if you take into account that's only if you take into account just like how much money it made. Overall, the Pokemon movie was more successful because it had a lower budget than this did.
Yeah, this movie it had to have a big budget.
Yeah,
because it's
CG stuff.
with all CG,
I saw
the music,
something-
everything.
I saw something around like 60-some million for like the budget for this, whereas the Pokemon movie's budget was only $5 and it made $170-some million.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
So quite the turnaround.
While we're on the subject of Patrick Stewart and everybody, like I said, props due for the cast here of slipping into their roles with the exception of Jeff Goldblum as Aaron, because Jeff Goldblum is not somebody you're ever going to miss, everyone slips so well into just being the characters. Val Kilmer has I really love his vocal evolution throughout the movie, because he starts out as kind of the cockier and more carefree of the two princes of Egypt until he comes into the role of a more traditional Moses, and his voice becomes very warm, but also quietly determined.
Yeah. And another thing I just thought about was, even though this was technically the more successful movie, I think that the Pokemon film has left the greater impact, not just on pop culture, but on, like, the film-going, like, landscape in general. Because it showed that, like, you could take imported films
And make them...
like, big money off of them. And that, like, franchise, like, animated kids films were not, like, gonna die anytime soon.
This movie did find its place in history, though. I mean, the timing was awful, but you gotta be a good musical to get a Broadway version.
Yeah, and let us not forget that I was just gonna say too that with the Pokemon movie, let us not forget, it has the most commonly misattributed quote possibly ever by the internet on it.
That being?
Oh, Mewtwo's speech where he says something like the really hard words of like, yo, that's super deep for goddamn Pokemon movie, which is, I can see that it is not what the circumstances of one's birth, but what they do with the gift of life that defines them. And that's from the Pokemon movie?
Yeah.
And people have attributed it to like Gandhi and Martin Luther King and stuff like that.
It's from Mewtwo.
And it's from Mewtwo.
Yeah, it's what happened. It's towards the end where
he's speaking with Mew.
Yeah, where Mew basically gives him that weird speech in Mew speak in Pokemon speak.
Yeah. And I'm just laughing too because this is a true fact. You guys can look this up. Former currently dead guy, former presidential candidate Herman Cain quoted that in one of his like bids for the presidency and directly attributed it to the Pokemon movie.
Oh, I remember that.
You can find he even said, I believe it was the Pokemon movie that said. American politics is wild, y'all.
All right. Prince of Egypt.
Never thought I'd have something in common with Herman Cain, but I totally would quote some shit like that.
About the only thing I'd like to share.
Yeah,
anyway.
About the only thing.
Anyway, Prince of Egypt. Prince of Egypt.
What else do we have to add? I don't... Because I just like this, but I didn't have as much of an experience as with you guys, so I'm just like, yeah good movie.
I mean, you already said your favorite scene was the Angel of Death.
Angel of Death, or like the Plague song, that was really good too.
Yeah. My favorite scene is still the burning bush.
Mine too.
Because the shadows and the lighting I really appreciate throughout the film, especially in the Plague Stomper, though.
Yes.
Like that scene, like that, the bit where the darkness goes over the face of the statue is really good.
Oh, yeah. It's also a bit of... There's also some symbolism going on in that a darkness is looming over the... over Egypt, over the empire.
Exactly.
And what else I was going to say is a little personal touch. So the first sheet music book I ever bought for myself was a Prince of Egypt piano songbook.
Oh.
And the first song I learned in there was The Burning Bush, just because I thought it was just such a beautiful piece it.
Fair.
Yeah. And that was when I was like 13 and finally had like some money to buy sheet music for myself.
My first sheet music book was the Secret Garden music.
For me, I had like a bunch of sheet music books before that, but they're all like hand-me-downs from relatives and cousins and my grandma and that kind of thing.
So,
first one I bought with my own money for like my guitar was I don't know what I was thinking here. I was really barking up a weird tree there. It was Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
There's not really any easy Guns N' Roses
No.
songs.
I was gonna say you must have been some sort of guitar masochist.
I wasn't. Yeah, I don't. It was that and Nirvana, neither of which are easy.
Neither.
Like probably the easiest Nirvana songs of guitar are like About a Girl and like what, Lithium?
Lithium, Poly.
Yeah, Polly's pretty easy too.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. Smells Like Teen Spirit is hard.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I took one look at the guitar sheet music for like Smells Like Teen Spirit, and I was just like, what is this?
It's like one of. Do you know what it reminds me of?
What?
Every person who first picks up a guitar thinks to themselves, "I'm gonna play Snow" by Red Hot Chili Peppers,
No.
and it is in fact one of the most complex guitar songs ever because of how many quick chord changes you have to do.
Every bassist picks up a guitar sheet music book and says, "I'm gonna do Don't Fear the Reaper."
It's like when you see like someone who's like, I'm gonna learn Flight of the Bumblebee on piano, and it's like, have fun with that one, buddy.
That's when you know you've got the fastest fingers in the world.
Yeah.
That's when you're Bugs Bunny in that one Looney Tunes short.
Yeah. But I do really like those aforementioned shadowy shots. Lots of good crossfades in the transitions too, like when Moses is going to Egypt with what's his wife's name again?
Zipporah.
Sephora.
Sephora. Yeah.
Sephora. Zipporah.
The T is silent.
So
There's a T in there.
It's the first letter. Zipporah is spelled with a T.
So they're riding a camel into Egypt, and there are crossfades going on with reaction shots of the slaves being beaten by their overseers on the pyramids. And then it just fades into the throne room where Moses and Ramesses are meeting again. And like there's a lot of cool like match cuts and graphic rhyming going on amidst the animation.
Yeah. So, we got anything else we want to talk about?
I mean, I think I mentioned how I got introduced to this movie.
Yeah, you did.
I did, yeah, with my grandparents and my weird religious upbringing.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, it was one of those movies. I was like, if it's not, it's like, this is a religious movie that's not VeggieTales. You can watch it.
So, I will say that I'm not gonna claim to be super religious, but I have my yeah, but I have my own like spiritual perspectives, let's say, and there's a God up there. I'm hoping he's half as chill as this one in this movie,
Would you
because
call this one chill?
Well-
I wouldn't, just because of the plagues.
relatively, he's about the chillest OT version of God you're going to get.
You know, I was always confused that God starts off the plagues where he's like, all right, I need to let them know I'm serious. Frog.
Well, technically, the first one was the River of Blood.
That's right.
Oh yeah, great
Weird-
scene there
weird-
too.
Weird like prioritizing of the sequence of the plagues there, I would say.
Yeah.
First, there will be a river of blood. Second, frog.
Second, all of your bread will rot, and the cows will die.
Nah, second was definitely the frog.
Second was the frogs. Third was...
Cattle.
No.
Food.
Third was, like, ants or something.
Yeah, all I know,
I can't remember. It's
all I
been too
know is
long.
I don't
can
understand.
bring it up
I
sometime.
still don't understand the frogs. Like the other ones, I totally get why.
I
those
think
are
they
all
were-
big deals.
They were
It's-
they were poisonous
I was gonna say they were
frogs.
poisonous.
Those were just some regular ass frogs. Those are just like regular
Well, I
Greek
mean, in
frogs.
the text, they were meant to be poisonous.
In the text of the Old Testament, they were poisonous frogs.
Really?
Yes.
Well, my whole point is that just weird prioritizing of sequences there from the plagues.
Yeah.
River
But-
of Blood. frog, locusts.
But yeah,
Wait,
like
raining frogs? Yeah, raining frogs, man.
yeah,
fire.
this god's pretty cool. Like you don't fuck with that god. You don't fuck with that version of God, but he took care of his his people. He treated Moses like a son in his weird fiery way.
You know, I love the difference between Old Testament and New Testament God, because Old Testament God is like, I will fuck your shit up.
Fuck around and find out, bitch.
Old
Yeah,
Testament God is a
because-
cranky bitch.
He is.
And then New Testament God is like, hey, I sent my son here. He's gonna take care of everything. Then
I'm a chill for now.
I'm a chill for now. Then he's gonna die. I'll take him back to my kingdom, and then everything's gonna be okay.
You'll hear from me again once the world is ended.
Yeah, and once the world ends,
That's a whole thing.
Good luck with that one, buddy.
That's a whole thing, man. So yeah,
Good movie.
in closing for me at least. Are we good for in closing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Solid film. I see why it's so beloved. I'm not like a deeply religious kind of person. My comments on religion are no comment. I will.
Fair.
I plead the fifth. And solid movie.
Good movie. Really important to my taste in animated films and the idea that it can go darker. I hope more movies take pages from the darker end of Dreamworks. This and The Last Wish had its dark moments, I'll tell you. I'm hoping there's a future for this kind of movie
I get you.
in American animation.
And although as I mentioned, I had a weirdly religious upbringing. Although I no longer associate with that,
Biblical movies have gotten.
Yeah, they
they really have.
Especially
I mean,
the
ever since
animated kids
VeggieTales,
ones. Especially
ever
the
since
animated kids
VeggieTales.
ones. It's like, what,
VeggieTales was never that weird, though.
it's like, what does this bull have to do with religion?
Because the golden calf.
Or a knockoff of Finding Nemo about Jesus called Finding Jesus. And it's just fish.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, although I no longer associate with that, I do still love this movie. It still holds a special place in my heart. And I'm glad I was able to show it to you, Daulton.
Thank you.
Have Richie revisit it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, first episode of Musical March Down. I will be giving us our next one. And when we talk about cult classics, this is the kind of movie that this show was made for. We're probably going to be covering, arguably, at least in my case, the most referenced director on the show who we have never covered a film of, aside from maybe what's his face? Italian director I always reference that I'm blanking on right now.
Oh,
Argento?
Argento, yeah. Yeah, aside from Dario Argento, I'm of course talking about our good pal Miike.
Oh.
Takashi Miike. For those who don't know, Miike saw a now fairly obscure Korean drama called The Quiet Family, which he was quite taken by, but despite it being a drama film, he found it pretty funny in a lot of regards. He thought like there was a lot of dark comedy to be had. So Miike got his people together and made a Japanese musical remake of a film called The Quiet Family. Now, join us next week when we look at The Happiness of the Katakuris.